The last type of problem that we'll see in section 1.4 is where we think of the composition of two functions f and g as being a brand new function. And so we might want to be able to, especially in the case where we have algebraic descriptions of both f and g, to have an algebraic description of the composition f of g of x. And so the main thing here is to not treat this any differently. It will feel different because we're replacing arithmetic and looking up things in, on graphs or tables. We're replacing that with algebra. So like before, when we see f of g of x, we should think of that as working inside the parentheses first. And so f of g of x would be the same thing as rewriting whatever g of x is equal to. And the only difference here, this will be an algebra expression. So the algebra expression x minus 4 is equivalent to the expression g of x. So now I have to try to understand what f of x minus 4 means. And I do this by analogy to what it meant to plug numbers in. When we said f of, I'll just write down an example down here. When we said f of negative 1, for example, we meant put negative 1 every place where we see an x. So in the formula for f of x, we replace x with negative 1 every place we see it. So the same thing's going to happen here. Every place I see an x, I'm going to replace it with x minus 4. I'm going to replace it with what's inside the parentheses. And so just like when I'm using negative numbers, I carry my parentheses with me. When I'm going to substitute in an algebra formula, I should carry my parentheses with me. So f says to take whatever you put into it squared plus 3 times whatever you put into it plus 2. And just take a second to think about how that's exactly what we did down at the bottom when we put negative 1 in place of x. So the only difference here is that now instead of x or a number, I'm going to have an algebra expression. So x minus 4 went in place of x in the expression. Now, because that's an algebra formula, it's possible to simplify it, and you'll see some problems in the homework where I'm asking you to simplify it, and other ones where I say you don't have to worry about it. If you don't worry about it, would be a good default if you don't have to, but there are a couple of places where I want you to see how the simplification goes. So if I'm trying to simplify this, I need to first figure out what these pieces are. So I'm going to do this over on the side. X minus 4 squared is x minus 4 times x minus 4. And so we use FOIL. X times x minus 4x minus 4x minus 4 times minus 4 is plus 16. So that's my FOIL method for multiplying that out. And I can combine like terms to get this. So x minus 4 squared is really the same thing as, let me parentheses there. It's really the same thing as x squared minus 8x plus 16. Then I have plus, this part is distributive property, so I'm going to distribute that 3 through the parentheses, so, oops. So 3x minus 12, and then plus 2 at the end. So just to highlight different parts of this, this part came from the x minus 1 squared. This part came from the 3 times x minus 4. And then, of course, the plus 2 is just sticking on the end. And then I could do a little more combining of like terms to get a final simplified answer. This looks almost like the same question, but notice this is now saying g of f of x. And so, again, I'm working inside the parentheses first. So that'll be g of whatever f of x is equal to. But we're given that f of x is equal to this mess. So inside the parentheses, I'll have just exactly what f of x is equal to. And so again, that looks awful because we have now a pile of stuff that we're putting into the G formula. So you might want to think about, what do you do with the G formula normally? And that's not a terrible thing to think about. So if I had G of -5, for example, G tells me to whatever the input is, that goes right there, and I subtract 4. So G of -5 means put -5 and subtract 4. And again, notice I'm putting parentheses around the number just to make sure I'm entering it right, and I can see what arithmetic that would do. So, so the exact same thing happens here. Whatever the input is, -4. So in the function G, I'm told to take whatever you put in and subtract 4 from it. And so that's what I'm doing. And now the algebra simplification is a lot easier. There's not much to do. The +2 and -4 can be combined, and that's it. So this would be my final simplified answer. So the simplification is not always hard, but what you'll find is you're not always asked to do it. As an answer, that's perfectly fine as an answer.